If you're suffering from writer's block and in desperate need of a vacation, then why not visit beautiful Lautoka? First, let's take a dip in the infinity pool. The water's fine, just try not to lose yourself in an existential malaise.
Where are we?
When you see the name Cronenberg attached to a film, it usually implies the inclusion of violence, sexual fetishization, or drug addiction. This movie has all three. All of the criticisms that the Washington Post had of this movie are the same reasons why I enjoyed it. Infinity Pool is the third film from writer-director Brandon Cronenberg, and surely enough, he is carrying on his father's gruesome legacy. Though David Cronenberg's films have often been associated with grotesque, Kafkaesque body horror, Brandon Cronenberg's latest delves more into the savagery of human behavior. Its protagonist, James Foster, played by Alexander Skarsgård, is a man filled with self-loathing. He's a writer who can't come up with a second novel, and lives off of his wife who comes from a rich family. Perhaps Brandon Cronenberg is even reflected in this character, an artist struggling for ideas and dealing with nepotism-induced imposter syndrome. There has been a conversation about so-called Nepo babies in Hollywood, but who better to carry on the Cronenbergian lineage than Cronenberg's own son? Skarsgård and Goth give great performances. The mood of Infinity Pool is somber, though it includes visceral scenes of extreme hallucinations and intense violence. It's a brooding satire of tourist culture and the nature of identity, all taking place within a dystopian state government. James and his wife are vacationing in a fictional authoritarian country where punishments are extreme and there doesn't appear to be any due process. There's a slowly rotating camera that begins the film as James' world is about to be turned upside down. He accidentally hits a man with his car one night and is sentenced to death. However, he is given the choice of watching a clone of himself be executed instead. This proposition is made even more uncomfortable by being shot with washed out colors and in extreme close-up. The creation of the clone is accomplished with a kaleidoscopic montage of color and light, and later a drug trip scene features similar psychedelic imagery accompanied by an equally surreal musical score. James joins up with a group of amoral socialites who commit violent crimes because they're bored, and they know they won't be punished because of the clone execution system. They celebrate as they watch their clones being killed. By the film's conclusion, it remains in question whether it's the original or the clone who contains more humanity. The philosophy of the film is blunt. The idea that they might all be clones is directly addressed in dialogue.
What do you think, James? Do you fear you may have just witnessed your own demise?
The characters wear monstrous masks as they commit their crimes, a way of disassociating from the heinous acts they partake in. Mia Goth plays Gabi, one of the instigators of chaos at the resort. She's a fan of Foster's first book. She approaches him while he's taking a piss and silently jerks him off. Throughout the film, Gabi and her group of disruptors exploit Foster in their game. Later in the movie, Skarsgård is tricked into urinating on his own face, and the movie ends with him breastfeeding from Mia Goth's bloody tit. Foster loses what is left of his humanity and morality as he eventually beats himself to death with his fists. The film works on a metaphorical level, though its lore doesn't make much sense when you start to unravel its threads. How can this government afford to clone human beings just to execute them? The purpose of executing the clones in public is to maintain law and order through fear, but it only seems to create more crime. The actual logistics of this clone-based justice system don't seem to matter as much as the central idea about the nature of identity and nightmarish social commentary about the entitlement of Americans abroad. An infinity pool is a swimming pool without traditional boundaries. It creates the illusion that it has no edges, that the water is disappearing into nothing. On his vacation, James Foster experiences a dissolution into nothingness. He sinks into his own darkest fantasies of decadence and self-hatred, and while the other tourists return to their shallow lives, James stays behind, having lost any semblance of identity after desecrating and murdering his duplicate. The film raises questions about identity and contains themes of sex and violence, but its conclusion is muddy.
I'll never know if I'm really myself for as long as I live.
Exactly. So who cares?
Presumably, James can't handle the idea that he might be a clone of himself, and stays behind in a world without repercussions, trapped in a cycle of abuse and self-destruction. It's a feel-bad movie with a lot of shocking imagery. I'm giving Infinity Pool a 7 out of 10. Watch Alexander Skarsgård go off the deep end, but at least he gets a hand job from Mia Goth.